Lights are pretty bright. I grew up in a small town. You might have heard of it. It's called Visalia. Anyways, I grew up in a loving, Christ-centered home. My folks are born-again believers and actively serving God, and they taught me morals and good values. And despite what they taught me, that's not what I chose. I chose a life of rebellion. I wanted to serve myself, and I didn't care what the costs were. I hurt those who loved me the most. I chose a life of pain. I wanted to serve myself. And, man, by 14, I was already dabbling in drugs. From the ages of 14 to 18, I'd done 1 year in a classroom. I was in and out of institutions and in and out of jails. It's just kind of nervous for me, but praise God. So you can see, 14 and 18, I was in and out of institutions, in and out of jails. And by the time I turned 18, my folks were like, they didn't necessarily, they were just like, you're not living under our rules. It's time for you to leave. So I left, and I was living on the streets, and I was introduced to methamphetamine. And that drug took every semblance of everything good in me and destroyed it. I was paranoid all the time. I would stay up for days at a time. My life revolved around my next fix. It revolved around my next high. And I was either selling to support my habit or I was stealing. And by 19, I had probably 6 or 7 warrants out for my arrest. The cops kicked in the door, and I was on my way to prison. I did a 2-year stint for stealing cars and for drug use. I got out, and my parents were loving and let me live back home, and it probably lasted for maybe 4 months. And I again resulted and turned to the drugs. And that ended up in parole violation after parole violation, dirty test after dirty test, and in and out, in and out, in and out. That became my life. Prison became my life, and drugs became my life. In 2008, I was arrested again, and this particular time, it was like on the movies. They had the streets blocked off. They had the house surrounded with cops. I tried to go out a window, like I'm standing, I'm watching the front window, and I'm seeing all these random cars. I'm like, that's not the neighbor's car. That's not the neighbor's friend's car. This is getting worse. So I emptied my pockets and went to hit a window, and then there was a cop like crouched down with a gun, and I had the gun in my mouth. And so to make a long story short, I ended up in handcuffs again. And I was back to prison, and I did a 3-year stint. I was released, and again, my parents took me back into their home. They loved me unconditionally, and they said, we want to support you. We just want you to get involved in a recovery program. And, I had dabbled. I had gone into prison and read a couple of scriptures and prayed a couple of times, and I still just wanted to please myself. I still wanted to serve myself. So I got out, and I got involved in this recovery program, and I began to see like what life was like without drugs. I began to see relationships getting healed, and I was able to meet my future wife, my soon-to-be wife. And she loved me and accepted me as I was, despite all the prison violations, despite all the tattoos and all that garbage. And we started dating for several months, and then it just ended up that I wanted to do drugs more. I wanted to serve myself more. And I pretty much just left. I didn't even say goodbye. I just took off and started living and running the streets again. And we stayed in contact through that time. She was, I loved her. I still do. And she didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to say. She saw me, and she saw me for who I was, the real me. So, anyways, that stint where I left her and started living and running the streets ended ended up in another parole violation. Another time that the cops kicked in the door and I was arrested. And anyways, I was in jail and I called her on the phone. And I told her I was, and I said, hey, would it be possible if I wrote to you? She said, yeah. She said, of course. So we started an awesome letter writing relationship. And it was cool to see how God, she would write me a letter and ask me questions, and then the letter that she got from me that day would already be answering those questions. And you can't describe that except God at work. So I was in prison for a stint, and I got out. And this would be in, I think, 2010. And we were married. We got married shortly after I was released in September 2010. And then in December of 2010, I remember stopping at the stoplight, and then 5 days later, I remember waking up. And my truck made the front page of the papers. I don't remember anything else. I remember them they told me they put the blanket over me, and they said, this guy's dead. And then when I got to the emergency room, I came alive. I took a breath of air and was alive. So that was another stint that God was trying to get my attention. I'm still alive today, praise God. So, where am I? Well, I flew through a windshield. I survived. And I'm still married. And I get healed up, and I get a job, and, I start trying to live for God and trying to live as a stepdad and have a relationship. And the addiction takes over again. And I get high a couple of times. I think I can handle it, think I can keep it for my wife. And it ends up that I'm running the streets again. My wife has chained the locks on the door. She doesn't know what to do with me. She's shut my phone off. One thing after another was just destruction. And sure enough, I was arrested again. This is probably for the 8th time I was sent back to prison. And so I'm in the county jail, and I'm thinking that something needs to change, maybe just a little bit. So, but I'm thinking that there's no way that my wife's going to divorce me. She loves me too much, and we'll just write letters, and everything will be hunky dory. Well, she comes to visit me, and she sits down, and she says the first words out of her mouth. I tell her I love her. Everything's going to be all right. I'm going to be out soon. And she just looks at me. She goes, I'm filing for divorce. And the look on her face was, she wasn't kidding. She was serious. And no matter how much I pleaded and how much I tried to convince her that I'm a changed person, I'm never gonna get high again, I'm never gonna do drugs, she wouldn't mind it. So with this particular case, I had pending charges with the district attorney, and that was another prison stint, and I was looking at a minimum of 5 years. Thankfully, the district attorney didn't file charges, but the deputy commissioner did, and they sent me for 9 months in custody. I can get out in 4.5 on good behavior. So I'm in Delano, and there's no phone calls, there's no visits. Delano's a prison, it's a reception center. And all I literally have in my cell is a pencil and a Bible and my thoughts. And I started waking up early, and I started reading my Bible before my cellmate got awake. And I started a furious letter writing campaign, and that's one way that I would just express myself was, through my mind. I would just write it on paper. And I began to actively see God working in my life, And selfishly, I prayed, Lord, fix my marriage and let me get out soon. And I also prayed that my wife wouldn't have enough money to file for a divorce. So, anyways, thankfully, she still loves me, and she began to see the change, and I began to see the change, and I began to see that I can be a part of what God has called me to be a part, regardless of my past, regardless of who I was, and I began to believe that there's nothing that I can do that can separate me from God's love and God's forgiveness. And I'm here today. I'm standing I'm a new man. I have a relationship. Thank you. Give God the glory. And I have a relationship with my wife, and how convenient she wasn't able to make it today. She was in Las Vegas. But anyways, I have a relationship with her that is blossoming. I have a relationship with my Creator that is growing. I have a relationship with God-centered men that God has put in my life that are growing. And it's a path of surrender, and it's a path of just, God is a restorer of brokenness. And he takes my brokenness and turns it into something beautiful. And he does work miracles. And that's my testimony. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share. And never again do I ever have to put these handcuffs on. This was my life for as long as I can remember. Thank you.